Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good evening. You're watching the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. First, the headlines. Israel launches 30 aerial attacks in Gaza, killing 5 Palestinians as Gaza fighters fire rockets at Israel. U.S. warplanes bomb Islamic State positions marching on Iraq's Kurdish capital, and 50 of its militants are killed. And the U.S. Relief Organization, whose workers contracted Ebola, welcomed WHO classification of the spread of the virus as an international health emergency. Those were the headlines. Now for the news in detail. His Majesty Sultan Qaboos has sent a cable of greetings to His Excellency President Rafael Correa Delgado of Ecuador on his country's independence anniversary. Israel launched more than 30 aerial attacks in Gaza today, killing 5 Palestinians, and fighters fired rockets at Israel as the conflict entered a second month, defying international efforts to negotiate an agreement for an extended ceasefire. Medical officials in Gaza said 2 Palestinians were killed when their motorcycle was bombed, and the bodies of 3 others were found beneath the rubble of one of 3 bombed mosques. The airstrikes, which lasted through the night, also bombed 3 houses, and fighter planes also strafed open areas. The Israeli military said that since midnight it had attacked more than 30 sites in the coastal enclave without specifying the targets. Gaza fighters fired 6 rockets at towns in Israel's south today, setting off alarm sirens and causing no damage or injuries. Violence also picked up in the occupied West Bank, where Israeli soldiers shot and killed 2 Palestinians since yesterday. U.S. President Barack Obama said he was willing to consider broader use of military strikes in Iraq to beat back Islamic State militants, but Iraqi political leaders must figure out a way to work with each other. 30 militants were killed and dozens were injured from Daesh fighters in an aerial strike in the Iraqi city of Baquba. At the same time, Kurdish sources said that 20 fighters were killed and 50 others were wounded in U.S. airstrikes that targeted fighters of Islamic State on the border between Mosul and Erbil. U.S. warplanes bombed Islamic State fighters marching on Iraq's Kurdish capital yesterday, after Obama said Washington must act to prevent genocide. Islamic State fighters have advanced to within a half-hour's drive of Erbil, capital of Iraq's Kurdish region and a hub for U.S. oil companies. They have also seized control of Iraq's biggest dam, which could allow them to flood cities and cut off vital water electricity supplies for the second straight night. The United States also dropped relief supplies to members of the ancient Yazidi sector, tens of thousands of whom are massed on a desert mountaintop seeking shelter from fighters who had ordered them to convert to die. Mexico's Congress voted to implement an historic reform, reopening the state-controlled oil and gas sector to foreign firms, which were expelled in a 1938 nationalization. Major oil companies are now gearing up to invest in Mexico's energy sector. More details in the following report.
It was a long-awaited comeback. Foreign firms are preparing to return to Mexico's oil sector 76 years after they were kicked out of the country. The monopoly held by state-run energy giant Pemex has ended thanks to an energy reform voted recently by Congress. President Enrique Peña Nieto is to sign the legislation, the centerpiece of his efforts to reform Latin America's second biggest economy.
The president's goal is for Mexico to become an energy power, and we are giving ourselves the tools through those laws to make it happen.
The reform will allow foreign companies to sign profit-sharing contracts with Mexico and drill for oil and natural gas as soon as next year. Major oil companies like U.S. giant ExxonMobil and British BP are already lining up to enter the Mexican market, but they are doing so with caution, waiting to see the first contract's details.
It's obvious that the big international companies have interest in coming here, but these firms also have expectations. They want to see more. They want to see these projects.
But opening the door to foreign investment doesn't please everyone. Opponents fear the legislation is a first step to Pemex privatization and will cut Mexico's budget, a third of which comes from the firm.
This fiscal framework is really generous, and it seems to me that we are giving too much to foreign firms, and so we are risking the Mexican oil income.
But for many, steps were needed to address Pemex's various problems: inefficient management, corruption, and most of all, a drop in production from 3.4 million barrels a day in 2004 to 2.5 million today. The giant also lacks technological and financial means to access its deepwater reserves.
Yes, I think the market needed this reform, especially to raise the competitiveness of oil companies and refineries. We have production lines that are not competitive.
The reform has led to a number of protests around the country, as many Mexicans fear Pemex, seen as one of their crown jewels, will be taken away. Energy workers, backed by the left wing, have promised to keep on fighting the law.
Stay tuned, because still to come in our news bulletin. Light to moderate to heavy rains fell in a number of wilayas of the Sultanate.
من هنا تبدأ أسطر الحكاية. تقاليدها راسخة كالجبال. أصالتها مضرب مثل في كل مكان. بساطتها ليس لها مثيل. لا حدود لكرمها. حاضرها مشرق متجدد. مهرجان الصلالة السياحي 2014 من 30 من يوليو إلى 6 من سبتمبر.
Welcome back to the news from the Sultanate of Oman Television. The Ministry of Civil Service, represented in the Directorate General of Employment, conducted employment examinations in the Governorate of Brahmi. The number of those competing on job vacancies reached 1,004 citizens, and 796 of them did the written examinations. The number of job vacancies was 71 and varied among stereotypes, crafts and services. The ship's movement at Port Sultan Qaboos and Salalah Port witnessed a growth in the total of loaded and unloaded cargo. The total growth of both ports stood at 2% and 34.9% respectively, compared to the same period of last year. Port Sultan Qaboos witnessed an increase of 2.3 million tons, while Salalah Port registered by an increase by 5.4 million tons of loaded and unloaded cargo. The total amount of certificates of deposit issued by Central Bank of Oman reached 730 million Omani riyals. The average interest rate of these certificates was 12%, while the highest acceptable rate was 10%. Authorized banks only share certificates of deposit with Central Bank of Oman to implement monetary policy operations that aim to manage liquidity in banking sector as well as preserve stability of capital market in general. Muscat securities market maintained its gain due to a number of increases recorded by leading companies at the level of 7,336 points, raising by 1.9%, comprising a rise by 135 points with the increase of prices of shares. The market value of listed companies increased to 15% to 3 billion Omani riyals, recorded with a gain of 172 million Omani riyals. The U.S. relief organization whose workers contracted Ebola has welcomed the World Health Organization WHO classification of the spread of the virus as an international health emergency. George Salem, Vice President of Finance and Operations of SIM USA, welcomed the response to the crisis, saying the outbreak is a significant event.
We are in constant contact with the CDC as well as various state and county health authorities, and we are always looking for the best practices to apply to every situation that we're faced with medically and health-wise. And we want to take care of our people, obviously, and we want to take care of the people they come in contact with. So as we review these policies and practices, we're always looking at what can we do better? How can we improve these practices? And historically, we've tried to take the one step higher approach as we look at what the standard protocols are for these situations and just try to do a little bit more. This is a significant event that is occurring in West Africa, and I think the more exposure to it, the more wise commentary from organizations like the WHO or the CDC, I think is important. I think it's valuable. I think what they're saying, it's a little late, I'll be candid, but it's better late than never, and we pray that these kind of things start moving the pendulum in the right direction to bring more people into the dialogue and the commentary.
A number of wilayas of the Sultanate witnessed rainfalls in various intensity. Heavy to moderate rain fell in the Wilaya of Iski in the governorates of Dakhliya. The rains were centered on mountain peaks which caused wadis and their tributaries to overflow. The villages of the Wilaya of Pehla as well as Niaba of Samad al-Shan in the governorate of North Sharqiya also witnessed heavy rainfall, accompanied by gusty winds that caused some damage, and in some areas electricity was cut off. The Wilaya of Al-Madaybi witnessed light rains. These pictures are taken from the Niaba of Samad al-Shan of the Wilaya of Madaybi. Now for the general weather forecast around the Sultanate. Cloudy skies will prevail over the coastal areas of the governorate of Dhofar and nearby mountains with chances of intermittent drizzle. Rest of the Sultanate will have clear to partly cloudy skies with chances of rain over parts of the Hajar Mountains. Winds will be southerly to southwesterly moderate to active along the coast of Arabian Sea, while it will be southerly to southeasterly light to moderate in the rest of the Sultanate. Seas along the coastal areas of Arabian Sea will be rough with a maximum wave height of 4.5 meters, and along the rest of the coast it will be moderate with a maximum wave height of 2 meters. This is the Sultanate of Oman television. Before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. Israel launches 30 aerial attacks in Gaza, killing 5 Palestinians as Gaza fighters fire rockets at Israel. US warplanes bomb Islamist State positions marching on Iraq's Kurdish capital, and 50 of its militants are killed. And the US relief organization whose workers contracted Ebola welcomed WHO classification of the spread of the virus as an international health emergency. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news bulletin from all of us here at the newsroom and studio. Thank you for watching and good night.